spring planting. I hope you're ready to go. We've got some tips for you this morning on our ALCIVIA Co-op Talk program. Justin Travis is joining us, Agronomy Account Manager with ALCIVIA out of the Kings Valley facility. And Justin, I guess probably we should start in the machine shed making sure the equipment is ready for planting, right? What's the recommendation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now before the wheels start turning out in the field, we want to check that planter over, get our seed meters tested and make sure that we're going to get the accuracy and the singulation that we want out in the field, which is going to allow for our, desired populations and such, and replace those wear parts on that planter that make us have the best stand possible when it is come planting time there.
And once we get the seed in the ground, of course, we want the planter working, right? So we get the populations we're looking for and evenness of the emergence of the crop. What are the recommendations there and the way to get the proper performance?
We want our crop to all come up at about that same time. So if you take corn, for example, if we get a plant that is a leaf stage behind its neighboring plants, that plant is only going to yield about 80% of what its neighbors will. Or if it's two leaf stages behind, at best it's probably only going to yield about 50% of its neighbors. So we all want to shoot for getting those plants out of the ground about that same time, within 24 to 48 hours to maximize our yield potential.
And, of course, soil types, tillage practices, and, of course, that planter performing right will make sure we get there for that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we got to make sure that, our seeding depth is correct, that we get good row closure at planting time. We want to manage our residue accordingly, especially if we're planting into that corn stubble, a high residue type of scenario there to get our desired population.
And, of course, we get the desired population, and hopefully we've got evenness of emergence. How do we evaluate that, the strength of the varieties and the evenness of emergence, because those variety selections are so important?
That's really where it's nice, if you've got some split planter or, different varieties on the farm or a plot even, that you can get out and take your stand counts to compare those varieties against one another and even look at the different, tillage type systems, look at how those plants or how those varieties performed in a no-till or minimum till setting versus, conventional tillage and how strong of emergence we're seeing.
And hopefully we're going to have a good spring here so we can plant and get good emergence. But as we go into the season, we check all the things we want to check, like the population and the evenness of the emergence. Then we got to really do some troubleshooting. When do we start looking for things like insect pressures and dealing with those if they appear?
As soon as that seed is in the ground, we have to think about some of our insect and disease pressure, those seedling diseases. So as we're out taking those stand counts, it's a good time to look for what the overall condition of that plant is. Say for example in corn we see some plants that are flopped over on the ground. We may have a cutworm issue that we need to address and get an insecticide application out there as soon as possible. But, just looking at that overall plant condition, sometimes we can identify, is there a nutrition shortage? Are those seedling diseases having an effect on those plants? Or was there some other type of injury, whether it's from Mother Nature or herbicide application or something that's holding those plants back? A lot of times, too, if we see some issues, it's time to get the shovel out and start digging, and we can identify, what is causing a lot of those issues, whether it is some below-ground insect or disease pressure, or maybe even some compaction at planting that's giving us some trouble.
Justin Travis, our guest, Agronomy Account Manager with ALCIVIA Cooperative, headquartered at the Kings Valley facility. And Justin, you say we. I would assume if farmers go out and walk their fields and find some of these problems, it helps to call an agronomist like yourself from ALCIVIA to come out and help diagnose these problems and the remedy, right?
Exactly, yep. Never hurts to get a second set of eyes on something and see, if there's some corrective action that needs to be taken.
As an agronomist, are you getting excited or getting anxious for spring planting?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Always brings promise of green fields and warmer weather. It always gets a guy ready for spring.
It certainly does, and hopefully it's not too far away. So again, with your cropping program, be prepared, as Justin tells us. Justin Travis, Agronomy Account Manager with ALCIVIA on our ALCIVIA Co-op Talk program. For more information, call your local ALCIVIA facility or go to alcivia.com. And with our ALCIVIA Co-op Talk program this morning, I'm Bob Bosold.